that. I'm going to bring it right up. We'll get started. So today's topic, Rambam finishes off his this series of halachot, the series of laws, the laws of proper, appropriate behaviors. Let me share the screen here. What am I? Something simple. Simple sharing a screen. Okay. Here we are. Chapter 7, Hilchot Dayot. Hamaragil b'chaveiro. Person who goes around gossiping, collecting gossip, as he puts it. Over below sasa. It's that bad. It's not just bad advice, but it's literally it's a prohibition. One of the 613. Shenemar lo selech rachil ba'amecha. Do not go around gossiping amongst your people. Now, this is not the kind of prohibition that one would get a corporal punishment for. Nevertheless, don't minimize the intensity of this sin. It's a serious transgression. The this kind of behavior is so severe that it leads to deaths. Therefore, the verse says, close to this verse that says not to go around and gossip, it says, don't stand by at your brother's blood as it's spilled, because it's it ends up in that. And he gives an example, a real life example. Go and see and observe the story of how King Saul, the famous story of King Saul pursuing David escaping to the city of Nov, and he was hosted by the inhabitants there, which were mostly priests, Kohanim. And there comes along, though they actually didn't even know that David was fleeing from his father-in-law. They did not know that. And Doeg goes and says, hey, King Saul, do you know what the people of Nov did to David? They fed him and they gave him ammunition. And he says, really? He became so angry, he went and killed out a whole lot of people from that city. The point here is that Doeg is just going around saying, yeah, I'm innocent. All I did is gossiped a little bit, but it causes blood to be spilled. That's how serious we see it. Okay. Chapter 2, halacha 2, number bet. Ezehu Rachil. Now the Rambam is going to now dissect 3 categories of what would generally be, loosely called gossip. The 3, just very briefly, are: 1 is just gossiping, just sharing extra info that's unnecessary. Number 2 is actually negative information. And number 3 is when it's fabricated, a libel, negative information. So here we are. This just going around, passing from one person to another. I heard so-and-so about this person. You're just sharing personal, invasive news, private stuff, just going around and sharing it, even though it's not inherently bad news, but it leads to stuff going to the wrong people and getting the wrong messages. It causes the world to be destroyed. It's not the kind of society that Rambam says we seek to build. There's a second category, even greater than this, ad ma'od, much greater, much worse. It's included in this prohibition, this prohibition in the Torah, and this is what we call lashon hara. This is speaking a bad, negative behaviors or news of one's fellow, even though it may be true. Although it is true. So, well, it's true. What's wrong with sharing it? Well, that's included in the prohibition. Aval, the third category would be ha'omer sheker, one who shares disinformation, fake news. Nikr motzi shemer al chavero, that would be called literally just spreading a libel. But you have to realize, Rambam says, the typical case is when you're sharing bad stuff about others. This is what so-and-so did. And you know where he gets it from. You know what his grandmother did. And so on and so forth. Just sharing negativity. And Tehillim Psalm says King David was a victim of Lashon Hara. People sharing bad things about him. And he says God should cut down the lips that talk, of people that talk this Lashon, the better people that just speak on and on. Proud things. Okay, number 3, Gimel. Amru Chachamim. Rambam's going to go on a little bit to embellish and express the importance of this myth of this prohibition. Okay. Amru Chachamim. The sages said, Shalosh Averos Nifraim min Adam B'Olam. There are 3 sins that the Torah says you will be punished for even in this life, not just waiting for the afterlife. And no portion, no appropriate portion in the world to come. Avodas kochavim, idolatry, vigiloi arroyos, forbidden relations, ushfichas damim, and spilling of blood. V'lashon hara keneged kulam. And if you speak lashon hara, negative about others, it's as bad as all. In other words, it seems so benign. It's just words. And sages wanted to impart on us the importance of how critically important it is and how lethal it is. Sages also said, it's so bad. It's as if you deny the presence of Hashem. Again in Psalms, it says, it implies here that they spoke negative with their words, and they said, Mi adon lanu, do we even have a master? Do we even have a God? No, there's a fear of heaven would help keep this kind of negative chatter at bay. Lashon hara kills 3. Ha'omro, the one that speaks it. V'hamakablu, the one that hears it, accepts it. V'zesha omar alav, and the one who is spoken about, who the one is discussed. They're all 3 harmed. The one that listens to it, this is again, you would think, well, I for sure did nothing. So-and-so speaking, I'm just listening. But you provide the platform and you encourage this kind of behavior. It's kind of, if we were to give an example for it, would be like, buying from a thief. You're incentivizing that kind of continued destructive behavior. So if somebody's shoplifting and you're buying from them, so in the sense, you claim that the moral high ground, but you're not, because you're providing the platform for this thing to operate. Number 4, in the category of lashon hara, of negative talk about one's fellow, there's avak lashon hara, kind of, it's got a smell of it, or literally means the dust of lashon hara. It's not as bad, but be careful, be wary from it as well. It had been included in the prohibition. Who would have imagined 5 years ago that so-and-so would make a life of themselves as they are now? You just are trying to open up their poor past. Or you say something like, Shishkumi ploni, oh, let's not talk about so-and-so. I don't want to say what happened. You basically open up the interest. Now everybody wants to know what happened. Even if you're not going to be the one to say it, they're going to find out. Similar stuff. Similar to this, if I speak positive about somebody, of one's merits in front of their enemies, I'm going to cause those enemies of that person to speak up and say, no, you think he's a good guy? I'll tell you why he's such a bad guy. So you're causing things. You're laying, it's a snowball effect. This is what King Solomon spoke about in his book of Mishlei, Proverbs. It's like making this loud blast announcement and blessing one's fellow, Hashkem, in front of everybody. It would be considered to him as a curse, because you're opening up you're ruffling feathers, and others are going to want to say, oh, let me finish the talk about this guy. Also, you claim to be starting with good, but it leads to bad. There's another way of making light of it. It's pretending as if I'm not trying to share bad news. Oh, I'm benign. I'm not trying to harm that person. Again, King Solomon speaks about this as well. Like you throw spears and you say, oh, I'm just playing. I don't mean to kill anyone. Also being dishonest about it. You saying, oh, I didn't realize it was bad. I didn't realize it was lashon hara, and so on and so forth. You kind of trying to cover and pretend. It doesn't minimize the talk. You got to be really deep down honest with yourself, and only you know what your intent is. Next, number 5. Whether one speaks in front of the one the presence about the person whom the subject here is. Or not in the presence, it doesn't take away the prohibition. If something from the cause of my talk will indirectly, ultimately cause to harm that person physically or financially, even would just scare them, make their life a little bit more challenging, all included in this prohibition. Now, here's a little, here's where the prohibition stops. If it's already a known fact, and my intent is not to share this per se, then I am not, there's no prohibition, doesn't extend here. If it's already known, it's out of the box, everybody knows about it, then it's not considered. So as long as I'm not trying to actually get the word out, it's just a fact that the word, everybody knows it. Next, 6. How are we doing so far? Again, if you have any basic questions in the intent and the meaning of what we're studying, it's a pretty light chapter in its understanding, a little harder to implement. But yeah, as always, feel free. You can chime in, unmute yourself and so on. Number 6, these people that just go slanderers and just share Lashon Hara, don't be their friends, don't be their neighbors. Join a different social circle. Don't spend time with them, and provide that framework for this chatter to continue. The judgment against our ancestors in the desert was only sealed because of Lashon Hara. Yes, it had to do with Lashon Hara about the land, but this should give us a little more sensitivity to the harmful potency of bad talk and besmirching and bashmutzing others through our chatter. 7, Hanoki mechaver. We're moving on to another topic. Hanoki mechaver, one who takes revenge against a colleague. Over below tasef is transgresses a prohibition. Shenever lo sikom, not to take revenge. Even though once again here there's no corporal punishment here, but it is a very bad character, and it should be worked on eradicating it from within. A person should seek to let things shake off, let them roll off. Things that are just of worldly matter. So somebody messed me over, get over it. Understanding people and mature people understand that everything is fleeting. For the most part, things are not worthy of taking revenge. What is the definition of revenge? Here's an example. Yesterday, Bob comes over to me and says, Hashileni kardumcha, can I borrow your axe, your hatchet? Amar lo, and I say to him, no, okay, it's just the opposite, right? I wanted to borrow from Bob. And he says, Amar lo, eini mashilcha, I'm not lending it to you. The next day, Bob needs to come to me, his hatchet broke. Amar lo chavero, hashileni kardumcha, can I borrow yours? Remember yesterday you didn't give me yours, or last year, or 20 years ago? No, I'm not giving you mine. That's considered revenge. When a person comes to borrow, give it to him. Be a mensch and show him what it means to have good menschlichkeit. Don't repay him the way he did to me. David describes in his Psalms, if I had repaid those who have done evil to me, I have not, basically. Next, ches, the 8th halacha, here in the final one for today. Now we're going even a little bit more fine. In Yiddish, we say a little more edel. We're working on eradicating negative character traits from within. And this is the Torah's guide for real menschlich behaviors. Hanoter le'echad. Here we're not even talking about taking revenge. We're stopping you a step before that. Holding a grudge on a fellow Jew. You're over below say. You've also violated the prohibition. So we covered 3 prohibitions here in today's Rambam. Lashon hara, lo sikom, taking revenge, and here's the third one, lo sitor, not to hold a grudge. What does it mean to hold a grudge? Ketzad hi anitira. Reuven shomer l'Shimon. So Reuven tells Shimon, Haskir li bayizeh. Can I borrow your home? Hashaleni shorza. Can I borrow your ox? Or in today's language, can I borrow your car? Shimon. Shimon did not wish to. Your lawnmower, whatever it is, right? The Yamin ba Shimon Reuven. Then Shimon comes to Reuven years or days or months later, to borrow something from him. Reuven says, hey, lach, here you go. I'll give it right over to you. Here's the keys. I'm not like you. I won't repay you as you've done. Even doing this over Belosito. You're holding that grudge in for all that time, and you're violating this prohibition. Ella, what is the proper way? You should erase it. Let the thing slide, not just in action, in deciding not to retaliate, as we said in last halacha, but here we're saying let it slide, let go of that grudge. Rambam gives us a little bit of a reasoning here, because if I hold that grudge, that will lead me to also want to take revenge. So the Torah actually throws in another prohibition to stop me a step before and work on eradicating the grudge in the heart. To let the entire grudge be let go from the heart, and get busy with other things in my mind, occupy my mind with other things. Don't give them, as we say, the real estate in my brain. This is the proper quality that the world can truly thrive, a stable and a constructive environment, and how commerce and how the social encounters of one with their fellow should be done. This is an important chapter, easy to study, much harder to implement. And the Rambam's, fills it in with words of encouragement and to emphasize the big, what's at stake, the big value of these mitzvahs. We should not just shove them under the rug, say these are the small mitzvahs. Just because we have an extra minute here. Today's the parsha for this week is Akev, and Akev means the heel. Rashi right away says the Torah says if you will follow my laws. And Rashi says Akev means my heel also, in addition to meaning whatever it means literally, because it's referring to you keep the mitzvahs, even the ones that people tend to step on. Like the little bit of dirt, a big piece of schmutz on the floor, you pick it up. The little schmutz you step on, you ignore it. And here's the thing with mitzvahs is that some of them we say, oh, they're so light and they're so frequent that the people that transgress them, that I tend to minimize them, say, it's not a big deal. We do these mitzvahs, so we violate these mitzvahs all the time. Let's not focus. Let's focus on the big ones. And Torah wants to encourage us, no. Who's to determine what's big, what's little. And as Rambam here puts it, he says, things like Lashon Hara, wow, it's up there. It's like the biggest prohibitions in the Torah, in the entirety of the Torah. So that's a wrap for today.
I have a question.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Aaron. Yeah, Earl, you got a question?
Yes, Rabbi, I have a question.
I'm listening.
Okay, so under gossip, under the first thing that we're talking about, how does one inform another individual about some negative characteristics of another individual?
That's a very, very important. Clearly, if somebody's about to engage in a business transaction or make a shidduch with somebody, and you know something about them that can actually harm them, and you make an honest assessment, and maybe it would be wise to take counsel if we feel a little bit biased. If we feel that a person can literally be a hurt for it, financially, emotionally, physically, then it is incumbent on us to stop that. That would be included in the Samad Adam Reyecha, to help the person, the potential victim. So that is absolutely the case. Here, it's more vague. We have loose tongues. We love talking about others. It makes us feel good. The psychology of it can be analyzed at length, but it's a human tendency. and it's usually not guided by invested interest in specifically protecting someone. It's usually about lashing out. We haven't really even done due diligence. Did the person change? Did the person go for therapy? Whatever it is, we just get a kick out of. We feel popular if we can share something bad about someone else.
Rabbi.
That's what the Torah doesn't like. Yes, Laura.
So also about Lashon Hara, I know that you're, about the gossiping, and I understand also that part of it is not being too praiseworthy of others. And that really bothers me, because I feel like you should always think positively and refrain from saying anything negative. But and I do get that if you say, oh, this person is really great, and then other people would think, hey, well, what about me? Or what about this person? Or what about, well, this person also, you think he's great, but he also did so and so. But
So
I find it hard to find a balance.
So I'll tell you what, Laura, it's the social norms must be taken into consideration of what in the kind of talk and in the culture that you're in, what kind of talk leads to what kind of talk. Of course, the Rambam is not pro withholding praise about one's fellow, if that's where it's going to last, and that's where it's going to end. We should share good news about others, but if we're being honest with ourselves and we're concerned that opening up a bunch of people sitting on a corner schmoozing and opening up the conversation about the file about that person, even sharing a compliment, if you feel that that's going to lead, based on the crowd that you're with, to somebody sharing the opposite of a compliment, so you stop yourself even before you open the person's file. Don't bring them up on the table.
I see.
That's the message here.
That makes sense.
It's about the goal and where it's going to go. And being honest with it. This is one of those things that Rambam makes it very clear that it's very possible for me to convince myself or to pretend something when in reality I know where it's going somewhere else. So really, really to heighten our sensitivity to this.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Anything else? Earl, did I answer? I forgot to check back with you.
Yeah,
pretty
much. I have another issue in today's world. So there's an old comment, or not an old comment, I think it's pretty recent, and that is, if you don't listen or if you don't read the news...
I don't hear it. Is it my internet or yours?
Hold on.
I hear.
Can you hear me now?
I'll try that. I think it was me, so go ahead. Say it again.
Okay. So if you don't read the news, you're ill-informed. But if you read the news, you're misinformed. So in today's society, we have a lot of opinionated news, and we have a lot of spinning, and a lot of information that is given out to people, and then they in turn give it to other people. And so where is the real truth, and is this considered gossip?
So that's a very good one. This is a whole big conversation. I'll tell you one thing that's for sure unhealthy. The tabloids that are directed at particular individuals, it has nothing to do with anyone's well-being, to follow the nuances of where somebody shopped or what somebody said or how they looked at a particular day. That's a culture. It's not about that kind of person. The fact that this stuff sells is a telltale that people are looking for gossip, to just dissect other people's lives for no reason. News is different. What was that?
Yeah. I'm saying this is really, you're going to say news, and news becomes a very interesting factor in our judgments and in our ability to teach and in our education, because it involves so much of society today, and it not only comes through newspapers and radio, but it comes through the internet. And so we have a tremendous problem today with, and I call most of this is gossip.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, I think the social media sharing stuff, accusations of others in a community or not, and things spread like wildfire today. So, you know, a minor issue, you can imagine how far Lashon Hara went 1,000 years ago or 800 years ago when Maimonides is writing this. You know how fast it travels today.
Right.
Before you give the person a chance. How it applies to news and honest news, it's a more nuanced discussion. News is more about events that is relevant and important for everybody to be an informed citizen, how to get authentic news. But I think if we can work on the protection and respect of literally of individual citizens, that would be a whole different society.
It's just really amazing, though, because the limited amount of ability for Maimonides to really see what's going on in the world, how much he knew about what was going on in an individual. Yes. He's just an amazing individual.
Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I have a question. When spies come back from exploring and they make this kind of, statements, do you can say it was Lashon Hara?
Yeah, the Talmud calls it Lashon Hara. It is not a classic case of Lashon Hara, because it's not about a person, right? It's about a land.
Well, yes. But as I was talking about people also, I mean, they mentioned everything. I mean, there was people and was everything, the cities, but generally, as a concept, you can clarify it as Lashon Hara, or it was...
The Talmud often refers to that incident as Lashon Hara. I think what we can take, the character here that is most similar is you can minimize the power of talk and you say it's just talk. Or you say, look at how the potency of talk is. It has the ability to make the subject live or die. In that case, the subject being the land of Israel, which was their dream, had completely died from that generation as a reality. They became disinterested and God took it away from them. So you see what happens. You can change the scope and how society, people see something, from being fantastic a day before to being terrible and something that, in a sense, dies. And that's in that regard, it's very much like Lashon Hara.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Okay. Wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Keep going.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That
Shabbat
finishes
Shalom,
a series of halachot. We start a new one tomorrow night. I know it's late, after Shabbat, 9:30.
Right.
Be in touch.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, y'all.